the king of Final Fantasy, reveals why the series is struggling. I think the article will be good, but
Yes,
the title...
Yes, just so.
Xenos is like, yes, actually. Basically, what I've heard from this article is that Yoshi-P would like to make an MMO. A new MMO. Naoki Yoshida holds the future of Final Fantasy in his hands. For me, Final Fantasy is having a deep story, rich game design, the best game audio to accompany those aspects. Chocobos, Moogles, and summons. Yes. Yeah, obviously. Yoshida transformed FXIV from an instant flop to a decade-spanning bop, which has become the most profitable Final Fantasy game ever made. It's Square Enix's biggest revenue driver of 2021 with more than 35 million monthly subscribers. Is that true? Over 35 million monthly subscribers? This is how he does it. Yeah, 2013, 2017. Yeah, that seems about right. We need a new one. He's known for his rare willingness to admit when things aren't going according to plan. Usually things are going to plan, though. What is he standing behind? Okay. In front of. I believe the essence of a job is getting paid to do what others find troublesome. That makes sense because I remember another interview that he did where he said that when he was learning about game design, learning to be a game dev, he went out of his way to volunteer for projects that were failing, that were not doing well, that had tons of problems. And this is like perfectly prepared him to take. It was like part of his natural progression to become the person who would transform Final Fantasy XIV from 1.0. The more your job is something people don't like or don't want to do, the more praise and recognition you'll receive for accomplishing it. Wait, does he think that people only like him because he saved 1.0 and nobody wanted to do it? Once you build up credibility, you can take on bigger challenges and be permitted to spend greater sums of money. Yes, about his link. I've talked already quite at length about his career in the game industry with Square Enix, with Bomberman, and all that. He befriended Yosuke Saito, which is how he got into the Squaresoft. Dragon Quest. Okay, let's scoot down. I want to get to the part where he said that he wants to do an MMO. I think the very concept of online gaming will gradually disappear. What? Back up. Yoshida predicts those old distinctions between traditional and online games won't matter much in the years ahead. Though the scale of integration may vary, there's hardly any video games without some sort of online component these days. I think the distinction will be reduced whether it's multiplayer or single player. So every single player game will eventually always be online. I mean, it does seem to be heading in that direction, yeah. After more than 10 years on the project, Yoshida sees FSV sticking around. Well, of course. I want to keep making sure that Final Fantasy XIV will be fondly remembered by many as a fun game that gave them the best gaming experience. I also want to make sure that it will remain in operation for decades to come. Why did this make me feel feels? I guess it's weird for me to put myself in the mindset of like, could we one day be looking back on the time we spent playing Final Fantasy XIV? It's like such a mainstay of my life. I'm so immersed in Final Fantasy XIV. Like I eat, sleep, and breathe Final Fantasy XIV. Like I'm obsessed with this game. It's all I do. I wonder if there will someday be a day when we've all moved on to something else and we'll all be looking back saying, You remember? Do you remember Final Fantasy 14? And do you remember when they released Bunny Boys? And how good that was? Oh my god. That's like very... That's... I can't. Stop it right now. Okay, we gotta stop. We gotta stop. Stop. I can't handle this. It's too early. But he also predicts that the MMORPG genre and video games in general will see massive changes driven by technological innovation. If we think in terms of the next decade, the development and spread of new devices. I paused there because I was still thinking about the other thing. I was still thinking about this other sentence. I'm thinking about that because here's why. When I was playing World of Warcraft a lot and World of Warcraft was my life, I remember one time somebody asked me where I would leave my character if we knew the servers were gonna go down and we knew the game was over. Like, where would I park my characters so that like to leave them there, you know? And at the time I was playing an undead character, and I always thought, oh, I'll probably put him in a coffin in Undercity or something like that, right? And then years later, whenever I decided that I just didn't want to play WoW anymore as my main game, like I just was really tired of it, I remember going to Undercity and I remember finding a coffin and like laying my dude down in it and exiting the game. So like, even though I didn't want to play anymore, I wonder if that something like that would ever happen. Oh my god. Let's move on. That's too depressing. That's way too depressing. Okay, anyway. New devices like VR chips may give way to revolutionary game experiences. VR? Wait, an MMO? VR MMO? I thought this could happen a bit sooner, but I believe it might have been delayed by several years due to the shortage of semiconductors caused by COVID. Yoshida also believes... Well, isn't this getting better? With the, was there the crypto crash recently? So isn't the situation getting slightly better? Yoshida also believes widespread use of quantum computing could have drastic effects on game development in the next 5 to 10 years and blur the boundaries between real and virtual worlds. Well, we're doing that already. You don't need quantum computing to do that. Like, just be obsessed with 14 like me. This would dramatically increase server performance and elements that could be simulated. A living world that resembles reality, or even new ideas that create an actual online world. What? That's really interesting. While it's easy to think about how games themselves will change, it's becoming increasingly clear that we need to spend more time thinking about the people that make those games. In the West, game dev has taken strides towards unionization. Wow, this article is based as workers at companies like Activision and Riot Games organize in an effort to change their toxic workplaces. At the same time, Japanese companies like Bandai Namco are trying to move toward a more healthy work-life balance for employees. Yoshida says these changes are vital to the industry's future. As long as games remain a form of entertainment, I believe the only solution is to keep examining the issue and meticulously improve management methods. This is really what it comes down to. Anybody that has worked in game dev, or hell, even like most companies, knows that when things are not managed well, it affects every single department in the company. Like, when things are not managed well, you have this trickle down of so many problems for everybody. You've got people who don't know when, who are like not given reasonable deadlines of when to finish their work. You're given, you give tasks to people that are not well communicated, like of what exactly will be expected of them, or those requirements of what could be expected of them for a task could change suddenly because like Department C, who had a hand in this project, suddenly found out that these people are working on it and not these other people, and now the plan's changing constantly and nobody's communicating with anybody else in a relative, like, in a short amount of time. And so everybody's just scrambling constantly. That is how game dev usually is, in my experience. No, but you need somebody that can manage this whole flow and who has a reasonable idea how long will tasks take without crunching people, like a normal amount of time for a task to take, and to make sure that people are communicating things well. This is something Yoshi-P does extremely well. No matter how much someone wants to carry on with their work in order to avoid burnout, it's important to assign mandatory breaks and have them re-energized where they reach their limit. Wait, Yoshi-P's the one that said this series? Okay, I take it back. I take it back that this was a clickbait title. Because if he said it... Wait a minute. Speaking of breaks, Yoshida could certainly use one. Damn, I'm remembering the live letter. Okay, so in the live letter last week, people asked Yoshi-P in the chat, did you watch the new One Piece movie yet? And Yoshi-P said, I look this tired. Do you think I have the time? No, I haven't seen it yet. He did look pretty rough in the live letter. Yoshida could certainly use a break. On top of his ongoing duties for FXAV, the hype train for FF 16 has left the station and the pressure is on for the next mainline installment of the series to live up to Final Fantasy's formidable 35-year legacy. We know it's gonna be good. Like, I bet anything that this game is gonna be fantastic, really. Like, I have no worries at all. 15 had a mixed reception, but there was a really screwed up development cycle, decade-long development cycle. So we think that Yoshida is going to make it good. We know he will make it good. Despite his enthusiasm for the bright future of FF14, Yoshida is characteristically candid about that of the series as a whole. In terms of whether Final Fantasy is successfully adapting to industry trends, I believe the series is currently struggling. We're now at a point where we receive a wide variety of requests regarding the direction of our game design. To be honest, it'd be impossible to satisfy all those requests with a single title. My current impression is that all we can really do is create multiple games and continue creating the best that we can at any given time. I mean, that makes sense. I feel like, imagine what it's like to be Yoshi-P, where you feel like the entire future of the Final Fantasy franchise rests on your shoulders and your ability to organize and manage this shit. Like, if it were me, I'd be like, damn, what if something happened to me? What if I had to move on? What about, like, who can take my place? Like, that, I'm sure he has these thoughts. Final Fantasy XIV, while a fantastic game, it has, like, a lot of technical debt from the problems of 1.0. Like, there are deep issues with the game that cannot be easily solved. Like you can see with our incredibly jank glamour and inventory system. That's just like the most striking example, or the housing system being as jank as it is. So it makes sense that he's sitting there thinking about, how can I make the best possible experience for a player, right? And meet the needs and requests of people who want all kinds of different games. Maybe people who want that more single player experience, and people who want more of a multiplayer experience, which is why he's doing what he's doing with Final Fantasy XIV right now, trying to make the entire story solo friendly. I'm sure that plays into it too, just trying to make more different kinds of gamers happy. To Yoshida, Final Fantasy has never been about chasing trends, but setting them. That ideology comes through clearly in FF14's persistent willingness to try new things, especially in terms of storytelling. When the game's servers shut down in November 2012 ahead of the launch of the ambitious reboot A Realm Reborn, that was before I came to the game, Final Fantasy 14 was not even on my radar at this time. F14 treated it like an in-universe apocalypse. We know. More recent expansions like Evansward and Shadowbringers tackle ambitious narrative themes like prejudice and the subjective nature of history. The love and passion Yoshida has for video games is palpable in everything he does. He's a rock star. He really is. Not just in the Final Fantasy community, but just like in game dev in general. I think that he has set an incredible example for other game devs to follow. And his transparency with the players, his willingness to be open and honest and communicate and explain every problem, sometimes to a fault. Like sometimes to the point where there have been times when he's explained things to us and I felt like he just went on and we're like enough already. Okay, we get it. But I love him for that, you know. But despite his lofty predictions for the future, he's content to keep making games, any games for as long as he can. I'm a game designer. I always have several ideas for games. I can't talk about them here, but I think that goes for any game designer, he says. I'm the kind of person who's happy as long as they can make games. Here we go. So while there isn't anything in particular, here we go. I occasionally think that I would like to make one more MMORPG title from scratch before I die. What? 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 Yoshi-P, hear me out. Just put bunny girls and bunny boys in it, okay? That's my only request. If it's not Final Fantasy, like if you can't use Viera because of copyright, literally just make the ears flop down instead. Like that'll work. Instead of like that, they can just be like, all right, that's all. Damn. Can you imagine Yoshi-P having the ability to design an MMO from the ground up, from scratch, years and years from now, after he's collected all of his knowledge and wisdom and experience from Final Fantasy 14? Like, it would be so good. That game would be so good. Please make it happen someday. I'll be there. I'll be there no matter what it is. Yeah. It's gonna be such a... One day. Don't think he'll make another one after XV? He said he wants to. He said that is his one thing that he wants to do. The thought of a Square Enix MMO that isn't an FF title scares me. Oh, I don't think... Honestly, I feel like the odds are pretty good that it would be another FF MMO. I feel like that just makes the most sense. That just makes the most sense. To me. But we don't know. He's just saying what he'd like to do someday in the distant future. I thought he said he wants to plan 10 years more for FF14. Yeah, he did say that. He said he said FF14 is his life's work. And he's gonna be around for at least another 10 years. But this comment, it's very vague. It's just like him dreaming about what could maybe happen if someday in the far-flung future. Like maybe someday I'd like to do that before I die. It doesn't mean like I'm gonna quit making FF14 at all.